Tina, welcome back to PubKey.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I love your studios.
Thank you. You're our first guest.
I'm very honored to learn that. I was like, I thought you would want to have someone who's, a decision maker or a, government official. Wasn't Scott Bessent at the opening party?
He was.
Yeah.
He didn't. We're still working on him to come back for a podcast. He's pretty busy. You're very busy as well. But you've been through here. We've been talking since we started the project in D.C. Mm-hmm. I think after we hosted President Trump in New York, you and I connected then for...
Sometime after then, I think it was also when the DC papers reported that a Bitcoin bar was taking over.
Oh, yes.
Yes, it was taking over Hill Country, which for listeners was the old space that occupied here. It was like a Texas barbecue / dive / karaoke, live music venue. Yeah. A lot of young Republican staffers really loved coming here. So having it taken over by, having the lease taken over by a Bitcoin bar seemed to symbolize some massive shift in DC. Yeah. I think the young Hill staffers were very, they didn't like it very much. I remember coming here the last night and just heard someone was yelling, "Fuck Bitcoin."
Yeah, they were chanting it, I heard.
Something like that. Yeah. Line out the door. I think like a lot of Republican staffers with ties to the place came through, and then a bunch of reporters who cover those Republican staffers were also here, I guess including myself, but mostly I was like, if anything ever happens with me covering this place, I kind of want to be here on the last day of Hill Country.
Yeah.
So.
Well, they were here for 16 years. It was also a neighborhood spot. Like, we've had a lot of people come through just because of the location and, what this specific place was over the last 16 years. A lot of respect for Hill Country. Look, they, surviving in hospitality for 16 years and building up a reputation where when it's time to move on and transition to something new, to have a line out the door and not just sort of go out with a whimper is a testament to the team. Like, I think that's really cool. But
yeah, honestly, it was like, it really did strike the city in a pretty profound way. Not gonna lie.
I mean,
but like that happens to restaurants a lot, and even the most beloved ones.
Yeah. Look, I think this neighborhood got hit particularly hard. I don't know. I'm not a DC native. But from what I've heard and from what I learned over the course of standing on PubKey here and just talking to local businesses in the neighborhood and everything, it seems like COVID hit this neighborhood harder than most in DC.
Oh, for sure. Like, this area is, I mean, would you say it's K Street? Kind of like
Chinatown?
Chinatown, K Street.
Penn Quarter?
Yeah.
Are they trying to get rid of the Chinatown moniker?
No, I think it's just sort of.
The brokers like to say Penn Quarter now.
It's just there's nothing Chinese left there. Like, yes, it used to be a Chinatown, and then businesses realized the rent was cheap, and then Capital One Stadium popped up, and right now the name Chinatown is more of a nod to the past of the city, and it's mostly fast casual bowl places now. Yeah. Maybe they'll have the sign for, Sweet Green or something in Mandarin, but that's it.
Performative.
Very performative.
Boston's Chinatown is like that. Chinatown in New York is obviously dominant, but Little Italy is a lot like that. It's a little bit more of like an Epcot version of what it used to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But DC, this neighborhood right here is office buildings, it's lobbying firms, it's law offices, interest groups, basically people who need to come into the office and spend money locally for lunch and post-work drinks, that kind of stuff. Yeah. When those guys all had to start working from home, like, this neighborhood cratered really, really badly.
Yeah, I can see that. It seems like it's coming back a little bit. I know Mayor Bowser had this as one of her, top priorities to turn around downtown or whatever we're calling this neighborhood. And, big renovation project at Capital One Arena. I think it's in the billions, and that's going to take a couple more years. But turning some of those streets into promenades, it's centrally located, right? Like, all cities need to have a strong city center in some semblance. And, I think a lot of people are coming back to the office. And we're hopeful that we sort of moved in at the bottom of the market for the neighborhood. I like this neighborhood, and I like the location, and it's been a very good space for us. But it's actually one of the reasons we wanted to have you in as our first guest, because you live here, you cover DC and politics, you cover it sort of from a global angle as well, in dealing with sort of, the crypto Bitcoin angles, the staffers, the pulse of the city, because I guess the pulse of this city also takes on a lot of externalities and what's happening globally across tech and other areas. So we thought you would be the perfect person to have in. So thank you for joining us.
Well, I'm glad to give people a vibe check of what the city is like, especially when it comes to Bitcoin and crypto. Y'all are such a new presence in town, and you are also just money that is new and didn't exist before.
Yeah.
So
Bitcoiners are cheap, though. We're trying to hold on to that Bitcoin.
Who was it that put up those ads all over the bus stations going like, this is how much the government's taking from your Bitcoin?
Ooh, I don't know. Maybe Stand With Crypto or Coinbase?
I think Stand With Crypto was a more, again, because I'm talking some really deep cut stuff in DC, since there are so many interest groups based in DC, corporations, nonprofits, NGOs, what have you, political parties, every moment you step outside and walk down the street in DC is an opportunity for someone to mildly try influencing you. So if you go into the subway stations and you'll see advertisements, it's not for iPods, it's for Lockheed Martin.
Okay.
And what Lockheed Martin's AI-powered future is looking like.
Slightly terrifying.
It's a little terrifying, but you'll see things like...
Probably doesn't have much to do with Anthropic for now.
No. But TikTok is here for small businesses, or unions are great, something like that. If you're like a federal worker headed to your job, and then every morning you see here's what Google's doing with AI lately, you're going to be mildly influenced by that over time, one would think.
Yeah.
And sometimes I see the Bitcoin ads around the city too, and I'm like, okay, yeah.
How effective do you think that is? I feel like, most people all across the country, I don't know if there's really a nuanced conversation that people are necessarily open to. I think that a lot of people have made up their minds. I feel like that's expressing a little bit more so here in DC. It's very partisan right now. I think it's a fever pitch. Mm-hmm. For that advertising, how do you think it makes its way through, a marketing team, and what's the ROI on that? Are they targeting staffers and interns? Are they targeting, tourists? Why spend the money there?
You can kind of spend the money based on specific neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. So, if you've got, let's say, Capitol South, which is a train station right next to Capitol Hill. Yeah. Anyone who's working in Congress who takes the train in will most likely get out there. So you're going to have a lot of very influenceable people. You're going to put a lot of money in that station. If you are know that you're going to go into a neighborhood that has a lot more diplomats, you would put something kind of similar to that in DuPont Circle's metro station. If you want a lot of eyes on your product or thing at any given time, you could even buy it's not going to be as hyper specified, but it could be something we're recruiting for ICE.
Yeah.
And you can wrap a bus with that.
Or snow shoveling.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah. That was more of a New York thing.
Oh, yeah. No. It's actually military recruitment ads that you wrap around buses. And then you'll just I'll just look out my window at in Shaw, which is a more college-oriented residential neighborhood, probably people who are I don't really know what I'm going to do with my life. You look out a window and there's a big old metro bus rolling by with that just says join the freedom fighting whatever ice.gov.
Yeah. See the world.
Yes, exactly. That's I'm not gonna say that's so spicy for this. We're having fun.
But so one of the things that I wanted to cover, and I mentioned this before we started, you're with The Verge, and what's your primary coverage at The Verge?
I call it big tech versus big government. So in a broader sense, it's about how technology is influencing politics, and politics is starting to influence technology control, opening gates, either or. And it's this constant clash between those two interests as like organizations and entities and like civic institutions, and then also just like the very technology itself changing human behavior, and then how humans interact with society and civic, like how humans interact with civic society as a result of the technology that's influencing them. So like initially it was maybe like, oh gosh, there's disinformation campaigns on social media, but now we're in a realm where AI is becoming vastly transformative societal force, and all of a sudden families and like people are losing their jobs to it. There's no safety net for them to fall back on. What sort of disruption is that going to cause? How are like say labor unions going to go to their elected officials and be like, here's what we want? How are banks going to suddenly deal with the rise of crypto, threatening their stablecoin yield, like threatening the yield-bearing savings interests that they have? Sure. What does that do to community banks?
Sure.
So it's such a rich beat to mess around in and see and uncover these new stories, and it's all happening so fast. But that's what I really love about doing it from Washington in a political angle, because like Washington also moves fast, and you have to be able to keep up with everything possibly changing in 30 minutes. Otherwise it just like makes absolutely no sense, and then something gets spat out of the legislative machine and everyone's like, what? No, what? How did we get here? Why is this the law?
It's brutal. I think it's driving people crazy, and I think it's only going to accelerate with the different disinformation campaigns. Now it sort of feels like you just assume everything is fake, and it only matters if you agree with it or not. If it's like, you know, your worldview being expressed, there's an assumption that that's probably true. And if it's something to the contrary, there's the assumption that that might just be fake AI generated. And I think it's going to continue to freak people out, particularly when it starts to affect their livelihoods more and more. What's your level of confidence that I would say the policymakers are going to be able to keep pace here and, you know, protect some core American values and livelihoods and things like that?
Oof, that's a really tough question. I think it really depends on, I would say, two factors off the top of my head. One is how informed are lawmakers about the technology that they're attempting to regulate, and how aware are they about the impact that technology has on their constituents. And two, who is influencing those lawmakers to perhaps go one way or another? When I say influence, I don't necessarily mean like, ooh, wow, money under the table, although a lot that does happen.
Sure.
But, you know, people will, like, the point of having an elected official is that you can go petition the elected official and say, hi, I chose you to be my representative. Here are my concerns. And in democracy, they should listen to you.
That's something that we've seen and observed as Bitcoiners, and also in broader crypto. I think one frustration that's been there for a long time, like over a decade now, is the amount of education to get folks up to speed. It takes a real investment from that individual. So if you have a policymaker, they're looking at 100 hours, 200 hours to really come up the curve on all the different implications for something like Bitcoin, how it works technically. You know, we had the climate change, energy usage boogeyman for a long time. It took a really long time to unwind that and explain the benefits of, you know, Bitcoin for power grids and wasted and stranded energy and stuff like that. But what I have personally observed, and what a lot of our friends, like the Bitcoin Policy Institute, which is headquartered here at PubKey, what we've observed is the only way to actually get through is to reach the people that do the work. It's not necessarily the policymaker, it's the staffers and the interns, and figuring out what the agenda of a particular lobbyist might actually be. Mm-hmm. So it's really critical to be here in D.C. if you're actually trying to push the conversation in the right direction, because if a policymaker is just interfacing with a large donor, it doesn't have to be under the table or untoward or anything. If it's a large donor or a corporate donor, they're going to have more direct access, but that doesn't necessarily mean the policymaker can receive the information and figure out what the ramifications are going to be for constituents, sort of. I feel like that's going to be a million times worse with AI.
Oh, gosh, yeah. I mean, a lawmaker only has 24 hours a day, just like the rest of us, and if they have a large enough staff that is focused on understanding deeply these key critical issues, that staff are so invaluable. What has been worrying me, though, is this trend of trying to outsource research and critical thinking on certain issues to artificial intelligence. It started off pretty easy, like in a fairly low stakes manner. I really want to do this story about how many people in like congressional offices and Capitol and just general like political agencies are using ChatGPT to come up with memos and speeches and whatever. Yeah. But like it's
not
easy.
Great.
Yeah, but like language recognition is one thing, but then when you are outsourcing, all right, how do I think, like, how should I be thinking about all the factors involved in, I don't know, let's do something pretty easy, like farm subsidies.
Yeah.
Having AI compile all of that information, try to filter it through the lens of, like, the other prompt that you're putting in, I don't know. It like replaces the human instinct that someone working in your office who's interfaced with constituents and understands like why they're like that they are angry or that they're not angry or they're like really supportive or really like you better kill this or I'm not going to vote for you. Yeah. Like you lose that element with artificial intelligence, and I think that's if that gets if a staffer gets replaced or if a staffer is like, I really don't think I can live in Washington for $40,000 a year and do all of this work because Washington's expensive. Yeah. Like, what happens to the ability for someone to vote in Congress with information that is relevant and, fulsome, I guess? Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Yeah, for their, like, purposes.
Yeah. The rate of change, I think, is dramatically accelerating that. There's also massive privacy implications as well. Like if policymakers and folks that are dealing with classified documents are asking ChatGPT to reformat some of these papers, I'm a little bit concerned about that. Not just chat; it could be any of them. But
did you know that the Southern District of New York recently?
that was my next question.
Yes. Take it.
I mean,
I guess like what are you like? I'd love to hear what your thoughts.
So New York assuming we're talking about the same thing. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump the gun there, but New York State is the first one that I know of to put forward a bill banning all of these LLMs from offering legal, medical, financial advice. I think it also extends to government workers. Is that what you were getting at? Or maybe SDNY was a different thing?
I think they certainly go hand in hand conceptually. What I was talking about was this ruling from the Southern District of New York courts that was like putting your legal correspondence between you and your lawyer into an LLM removes the privacy confidentiality between you and your lawyer because you're literally giving that information to another machine that is processing it for you. Yeah. So ultimately, there is a really strong argument for not having an LLM be involved in confidential discussions between you and the people who are supposed to respect that confidentiality. Yeah. What's been difficult, I think, for lawmakers, again, goes back to that, like, lack of information about how the LLMs work initially, and how that's easily filled in by lobbyists who come in and they're like, "Hi, yes, we know that someone who used to work with you. Have you heard about how artificial intelligence can, improve hours worked by your employees?"
Yeah. It does appear that privacy for a very long time, right? It's enshrined in our Bill of Rights, number 4, has been the one that gets beaten on so aggressively. And I think that this started a long time ago, maybe Bank Secrecy Act, Patriot Act, massive expansion for Web 2 companies to aggregate data. This is just a massive accelerant, and we may have already sort of gone too far for politicians to unwind that, because I think for the first time, well, even much more so, the incentives are so clear for these businesses. They're going to cut a lot of costs. They're going to cut a lot of jobs. They're going to drive massive efficiency. But on the back end, those are all really bad things. But on the back end, it accelerates what I think you were just saying in terms of, there are fewer and fewer safeguards for privacy across the board. This will probably also get spun in terrorism or protecting children as well, right? Like if you're talking to one of these LLMs about contemplating doing something illegal or cleaning up an illegality that's already occurred, it's probably going to be pretty easy to make the case to policymakers that that's a good thing, and law enforcement's going to benefit tremendously from this, and we're going to stop harm before it happens. Have you seen that start to kick up in conversations yet?
A little bit. That argument has consistently driven kids' online safety, lobbying, parentheses, normal.
Yeah. And yet we still have TikTok, Discord, and Roblox.
Exactly.
It's kind of backwards for me.
Yeah, there's a weird distinction that I think COSA, online kid safety advocates are struggling with, which is how do you balance the need to regulate against psychological harm to kids, SAM, sexual assault stuff, whatever, versus how do you also maintain an amount of privacy for those kids to, not have companies spying over them.
Yeah.
That's a really tough question. But the more salient and urgent thing for a lot of these groups is that AI has a lot of money in the pipeline trying to lobby against their interests, because that ends up being more regulation placed on them. So the fight itself is still, at least in Washington, incredibly existential.
Yeah. What do you think that we can learn, bringing this back a little bit to Bitcoin and crypto? So this was the first big election cycle back in 24. Time is flying. But, it wasn't just the presidential race. It was, Bernie Moreno, Sherrod Brown in Ohio. It flexed in other ones, but I think those are probably the two biggest, right? So since then, it's very polarizing, the current administration for sure. What do you think we have to learn from a DC perspective? How has it gone since the administration sort of championing crypto, calls himself the first crypto president, and definitely a little bit more willingness in Congress? Senator Lummis has been working on a lot of these things for a long time. More traction. Clarity has not gotten over the line. It's kind of ground to a halt a little bit. Do you think that we'll see a similar cadence play out with AI, or is AI going to be different?
I think AI is going to be a lot different. Crypto is transformative, yes. It's changing the way people think about money overall. It is still a financial issue that kind of lives firmly in finance. I haven't seen any cryptocurrency convince someone to kill themselves.
Yeah.
Unless,
well.
yeah. Unless, no.
That's very dark.
Okay. That's so dark. Maybe we should cut that one too.
Leverage does kill.
Yeah. No. I mean, just there's just far more ripple effect that artificial intelligence has among a vast majority of Americans that probably wouldn't even have been involved in AI if it just hadn't appeared in front of them one day and started changing all the elements of their lives. At least in crypto,
Sure.
like if you wanted to engage in crypto, you could do that. If you don't want to engage in crypto, you don't. It's a very like you like it or you don't thing. If I'm a, church-going parent who suddenly is seeing all of their friends being laid off and all of your kids getting into like weird rabbit holes, this is actually a fun thread that I'm following for the midterms. There is a really large Republican voter backlash to artificial intelligence, especially among religious communities, because they see artificial intelligence as kind of a spiritual evil that's trying to take the place of God. And the more that artificial intelligence goes towards AGI and replicates a human mind, the more they're freaking out about it.
Yeah.
And
it's the Antichrist talks by Peter Thiel and stuff.
A little bit of yes, I think he literally did say.
I think that was one of the main through lines. Unfortunately, I would love to hear what it was. I don't think it's published. It was like invite only stuff. So of course I did not get an invite. But I would have liked to hear. I'd like to hear what that thesis is. But from what I've heard, that's been a pretty consistent through line with his thinking there.
Exactly. So it's more like this giant sense of like, in Congress at least, it's been this sense of like, oh my God, there's just so many AI things that we have to handle at any given point. We have to deal with preemption, which the White House had been trying to push for a while, in which any state that was trying to write its own AI law suddenly couldn't because the federal government needed to write like an overarching AI law at the federal level. In general, that's a concept that's good. One federal law at the top that governs the actions of 50 states is easier and also handles, like, creates like lack of conflicts across state lines.
Yeah.
In this case, though, it was like, no one can have any laws. They have to pause enforcing all of their laws that they currently voted into place, regulating artificial intelligence, and you gotta stop doing that for 10 years.
Yeah.
Which
is an eternity.
That's an eternity for artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And people didn't like that, especially in Washington, and I think that's when I started seeing IRL horseshoe theory happening.
Yeah.
Like, the MAGA people were getting on board with the progressives, and they're like, we're all opposing this.
Yeah.
F you.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's a through line. There's a parallel with what we saw over the last more than a decade with Bitcoin and crypto. We had the BIT license in New York. There's some other states that also, had annoying regulations for companies. Right, the money service business licenses are a patchwork. Everybody has sort of different requirements. You need an individual license for all 50 states and beyond. And that creates a massive headache. On the flip side, I think that some folks are very concerned that companies like a Coinbase or some of the big exchanges would like to see. They would rather see a federal BIT license than this patchwork. So, like something that is rather onerous for a company to go out and get, and requires more KYC, AML capture of individual data and disclosures and all of those things. So I can kind of see both sides to that. I don't know where on the horseshoe I am, but I do think that the 10 years is way too long, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
But I do think that allowing innovative technologies room to run a little bit is probably worth the ROI in terms of, like, you don't want to stifle innovation. You don't want to have it go offshore. You don't want to create clear winners and losers. But I don't know. Maybe it's inevitable. There's clear winners and losers already here.
Yeah. At the same time, I'm not sure whether this happened in crypto. And if it did, like, please let me know, because I would love to chase that down. But at least in the artificial intelligence debate, what I think really tipped people over the line was an executive order that came out of the White House in December, where since preemption failed in Congress, there was another attempt to get it through Congress again through the National Defense Authorization Act, which is the bill that funds the military for the entire year. And then the White House put out this executive order saying if you are a state that is trying to enforce your own AI laws, we will not only sue you under the DOJ, but we can also remove your rural broadband funding.
Okay.
So all of these red states that really relied on that funding to, help like service constituents and get them connected to the internet, like that would be gone.
Yeah, that's an odd thing to go after.
Yeah. Then there was another clause in there that was like, we can also pull other non-discretionary funding, like say highways.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more punitive behavior attached to states trying to enforce their laws, and that does seem to go against the point of federalism.
100%. It's the first administration to have a crypto AI czar, right? So a lot of this is probably coming from David Sachs's office, and that's probably a big influence. And, big venture capitalists, that's probably more tapped in earlier to a lot of these things than most other people on the planet would be in position to see that. A lot of it, you can kind of see some of the bad writing on the wall with some of these policies and procedures that they're putting out there.
Yeah, it's look, I understand. I think there's a profound difference between eliminating onerous roadblocks to innovation and making it and like putting a punitive punishing someone for attempting it in a pretty existential way as well. We're taping this the weekend after the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, declared Anthropic, the AI company, to be a supply chain risk because Anthropic and the Pentagon were negotiating over the acceptable use policy, what, Claude AI could be used for. Anthropic was like, we don't want it to be, we have two red lines, no use in autonomous lethal weapons, or at least like don't let the weapons kill people without human oversight. The AI cannot make the decision on who to kill. And don't do it for mass surveillance. The Pentagon goes, well, I mean, we have the technology. We should be able to do what we want.
We do that anyway.
We do that anyways. But, like, a private company can't come in and tell us what to do.
Yeah.
Really harsh debate over a pretty philosophical question. If neither side liked it, they could walk away from that contract, right?
Yeah.
No, the Pentagon actually said, if you walk away from this contract, we're going to say that you're a supply chain risk. We're going to lose our $200 million contract with the Pentagon. But more crucially, anyone who uses Claude for their line of work for the Pentagon will no longer be able to work for the Pentagon.
Right.
So it was this like, okay, you won't let us use the technology the way you want. It's cool. We're going to label you a national security threat and then also screw over everyone else who uses your work to work with us.
Yeah.
Hegseth came out at the end of those negotiations and said any company that does any commercial business with Anthropic can no longer work with the Pentagon.
Yeah.
And that's even beyond I use Claude to, power AI tools for the Pentagon. It's I use Claude to, help sort my taxes out for my catering business or whatever.
Yeah.
So
why do you
that's
think
broad.
that was? I always, this was so, it struck me as very atypical that this was as publicly available, this dispute. This is a contract, right? And they're arguing about, we were laughing about it, the nuances embedded therein in terms of it can't be automatic. You can still do that stuff, but you need a human at the control. And the mass surveillance thing just on the back of, the last however many years is also a bit laughable. But why do you think this was handled in public so aggressively? Was it just the politics of Anthropic executives that had the administration want to pick this fight? Where did it come from?
I don't know, but I remember when I was reporting on this, I was talking to a national security policy expert who specialized in supply chains, military supply chains, and he was like, the Secretary of Defense could just say that someone's a supply chain risk and could do it secretly and nobody would know.
Yeah.
It's not even something that goes on a list somewhere. All of the companies that was working with, say, Huawei would suddenly be like, well, okay, I guess we can't use this company. this all stays internal, and that's a huge black hole in my understanding of what happened there. Like, was it did they need to create public leverage for this? Did the narrative already start leaking out to the press, and Hegseth's people were like, okay, well, let's take this war to the public. You want to go public, motherfuckers? Or does the Trump administration hate Anthropic because they're woke or whatever? What does based versus woke even mean anymore in the context of a supply chain national security issue?
Yeah, man, maybe Anthropic is that much better than all the other ones.
It was the only one with the security clearance high enough to handle classified information.
Yeah.
So, and none of the other LLMs had reached that status yet. Until last week, weirdly, when all of a sudden Grok got it, and then OpenAI may have it. We don't know yet. Sam Altman claims that they have it, and then he's also claiming, no, we're renegotiating the contract. I don't know. I do not know. I cannot even with these companies sometimes.
All right. So I do think that, I said this earlier, teeing up sort of our discussion. I do think that you were probably one of the most intellectually curious journalists that I talked to about the crypto space so far. I've talked to a bunch of them. It's not always the easiest process figuring out what the angle is and what the story is. Sometimes great conversations get chopped up by editors, and it's just like, that's not what we talked about. Particularly in Bitcoin, and particularly after the administration and Bitcoin was so front and center, or it was relatively prominent during the elections. We saw that have a little bit of an uptick. What's the approach? And I want to tie this back to more of the AI conversation that we're having. But what approach did you take when you started covering? Because you're not like a crypto reporter. You're a reporter that covers crypto, a journalist that covers crypto. What was the approach? Because this is a pretty weird world, and the distinction between, I would say, Bitcoiners and broader crypto is much bigger than the average person would expect. And there's a little bit of a learning curve embedded therein. What approach did you take when you started writing some of these stories on the back end of the election?
I'm primarily a political reporter first and foremost. Before I came to the tech world, I was writing about Donald Trump's election for Vanity Fair. I was a White House reporter for Politico. Before I came to The Verge, I was working at this place called Puck, and I wrote this newsletter about the American right wing. And even with there was sort of a similar problem when covering the conservative movement in that world, and a community such as crypto. There's so many clashing ideologies within that space that on the surface people just wouldn't be aware of. They're just like, oh, right-wingers, yeah, they all think the same. And then internally, no, it's there are the libertarians, there's the heritage folk, there are the neocons, there are the MAGA Trump people, which are all distinct from each other in so many different ways. I remember when I was covering Mike Johnson's election as speaker, and people were going, oh my God, no, he's MAGA Mike. He will totally follow Trump. And he says, I don't know, Trump didn't win the election. And I'm like, no, there is a really profound difference here in that Mike Johnson is a very deeply religious guy that comes from religious right-wing legal groups. And so they have a very specific view of how the world works. They have a very specific way that they interact with people. They're he is going to really, really invest in building a relationship between the Republican Party and Israel, guys. And I was saying this in 2023 or something. So when I started covering crypto and AI and all this tech stuff, it was because I saw the Trump administration, which I know very well at this point, suddenly start pivoting into embracing the tech world, AI, crypto, microprocessors. I'm literally covering a lot of chip war stuff. And it became such a big part of their of the agenda overall that I was like, okay, I kind of want to expand my horizons a little bit. And then I am actually learning that crypto is sort of the same thing. It's like one uniting idea. Currency can be digital and live on the internet, and government can't take that from us. And then how does that happen? How does everyone make that happen? Do we just stick with the one thing, or do we create our own thing? Do we create our own protocols? How do we make money? What does that exchange look like? And people are very passionate about their own individual visions for it. So
yeah, 100%.
So like, yeah, coming here and like learning more about the Bitcoin community versus big money crypto was like, oh, okay, here we go. This is kind of similar.
Yeah. And it's not super accessible. I mean, we try to make it accessible, but there are not many other organizations or companies across Bitcoin and crypto that try to make it as accessible as it needs to be to understand sort of those distinctions. Broader crypto is a bit like, a root religion. Like, it could be like Judeo-Christian values, but there's been lots of schisms and lots of different offshoots creating a different approach. There is that one unification, those like core ideas that probably resonates from Bitcoin. Maybe we're the like Orthodox Church or something like that. But it expresses completely differently. Like there are progressive Bitcoiners. If you go and you talk to folks in Germany, for example, the Bitcoin community in Germany doesn't look anything like the Bitcoin community in Texas. And actually understanding those different factions takes a fair amount of time, and most people are probably just not interested. It doesn't affect me, so why should I care about it? So seeing some of the broad strokes associating Bitcoin with MAGA, has been a little bit disheartening, but that's just we have to do a better job at actually explaining what the core values are and why those core values overlap with American values, at least in my view. But one of the things that has been frustrating over time is getting help from the folks that historically have been the disseminators of information, right? So mainstream media, a lot of times, very rarely do we get positive coverage across the space. If it's neutral, it's because usually the price is ripping. And all the other times, it's, Elizabeth Warren said something horribly negative and everybody is a sex trafficker and, money launderer and stuff in this ecosystem, which couldn't be further from the truth. What's been your experience in newsrooms and dealing with editors? Do you see that, has that conversation sort of come up? Is there a particular angle or an overriding perspective before a story begins? Or how do you deal with that as an individual journalist? Like, I'm sure some organizations have that a little bit more than others. But
yeah, I mean, I'm really lucky in that I work for The Verge. The Verge has been around for over a decade at this point, and it's always covered technology. It's always been on the cutting edge. It's like, it's not just how does the technology work and what's like ascendant and what's the coolest little beep boop that's on the market right now, but it's like exactly how does technology make us feel and how does it like change the world? And so to that end, like they understand that crypto is a really, really, really big deal, and they've been on the forefront of covering it for years now. We did a massive investigation of Justin Sun, and that ran in maybe like 2022, 23.
Yeah, interesting guy.
Yeah, exactly, very. But when one of my first big crypto stories was me interviewing a guy who ended up at Trump's meme coin dinner, and he did it by shorting Trump coin. Yeah. And I was like, you can short crypto? And that was a story that I just said, I talked to a crypto bro who shorted Trump coin and won a dinner, and they were immediately like, okay, yes, write that. Meanwhile, I'm looking at other publications talk about the meme coin dinner as if it were like people directly bribing the president and like taking money out of their pocket and giving it to World Liberty Financial, and that's just like the simple transaction. And like, no, that's not how it works. There's this really complicated mechanism behind everyone making money, but there's a way that my crypto bro went to this dinner and was like kind of, and like didn't really lose money doing it, and he just got a nice dinner out of it. And that was what he wanted. No one was like, very few people were there trying to curry favor with the president. It was mostly a bunch of bros who were like, I want to meet other people who also put on this trade and like learn from them. There
is a lot of, I think everybody's kind of lonely these days, but there is a lot of yearning for a sense of community, and that expresses with teeny tiny obscure niche cryptocurrency projects. It certainly is there with Bitcoiners. Like we see that all the time. That's what this was sort of built for, but you know, you do have a lot of people that come out of the woodwork for a sense of culture and community, no matter how obscure and like weird that community might be. But that must have been fun trying to explain that. So you're absorbing all of that information, and then you have to turn around to the editorial team in the newsroom and explain it to them. How do you deal with that like toggle?
I think if I were at a publication that didn't have that many tech editors involved, there would be a much harder push for them to understand the complexities of this story. I think like a lot of newsrooms are pretty strapped right now. Where literally 2 weeks ago, Jeff Bezos laid off 300 journalists from the Washington Post. And there are really good crypto reporters, but I think that they do thrive in publications that are already attenuated to finance and / or technology. But if you were going to go to like the New York Times, which is much more widely read, it's going to be hard to like have a story gain traction in that newsroom, because you could have a writer who kind of gets it, but then they have to deal with their editor who doesn't, or like other editors who will be like, why are you covering it like that? And then just all the way up and up and up and up the chain you go. I mean, it's an institutional problem for sure. And I think you see that in a lot of major newsrooms. And I really would not know the solution for that, because journalism is in a crisis right now.
I mean,
like we can't like there's not that much appetite or the funding really to hire more journalists, like more journalists or editors, or build out an entire section that's devoted to covering like crypto at that level.
Does AI do that?
Some people would like for it to do that. Some newsrooms, Jeff Bezos.
Was that a big factor in the decision?
To let go of those journalists?
At the Post.
They have been investing fairly heavily in integrating AI into various sections of the editorial product. One of the big ones that I think really pissed people off was AI summaries of articles and then the comments below it. This is a really long, dramatic media story, but a lot of what happened was a self-inflicted brand destruction by Jeff Bezos when he told the Washington Post to withhold the editorial endorsement that they would give during the presidential race. He was like, no, let's not do it. It was telegraphed pretty broadly that he didn't want them to do it, and then 300,000 people canceled their Washington Post subscriptions. It was a lot, and then it just kind of spiraled from there. He brought in a guy from the UK named Matt Murray as CEO, and he had this really aggressive goal of like, we're going to turn this around real fast, and we're going to have 200 million subscribers, and we're going to make up this like massive shortfall in funding. I think they were losing like somewhere between 70 million and 100 million a year. And the problem just compounded.
It's even a lot for Jeff.
Yeah, exactly. Billionaires will buy papers, but they just don't want them to lose money. That's their only ask. And this one was losing a lot of money. So they made some really, really, really harsh cuts. There's a big sense among journalists that it didn't have to happen this way. And you can't really tell what came first, whether it was the money problems or Jeff Bezos like accelerating those money problems by literally turning off a huge percentage of his readership. But I think the combination of both just made the layoffs really devastating.
This happened. I forget when this started, but I'm going back to I'm forgetting BuzzFeed. So like you had BuzzFeed, you had Gawker, you had sort of this disintermediation of like legacy publications. When did that start? 2015, something like that.
Like them, like rising or falling?
Well, the disintermediation. So
Yeah.
some of them doing really well, some of them being flashes in the pan, and then sort of flaming out, having a pretty dramatic effect first on smaller local newspapers. I think if we go back to like the 70s or 80s, local newspapers have probably been demolished or absorbed into bigger publications, 80, 90%, something like that.
Really big number, yeah.
Yeah. And now it's sort of continuing the acceleration. I mean, it's probably a dramatic analogy to make, but it's almost like the autonomous weapons. Like there needs to be a journalist at the helm if you're going to actually write AI. But where do you see this going? I know it's inside baseball and it's probably a multi-hour conversation in and of itself, but where do you see this ultimately going for the industry?
Artificial intelligence being
Well, the acceleration, because
Yeah.
I feel like it started with Web 2.0, and I would say like Reddit and Dig and Twitter, and just basically how people were sharing information. That was a perfect storm for disinformation,
Right.
to be really sticky via memes and deep fakes and stuff like that. And all of the building blocks for that were really in place before AI broke onto the scene in a major way. It probably existed and was part of it earlier, but now it is on the scene, and we are seeing these pretty dramatic changes, like at the Washington Post, and there's probably other ones in the pipeline as well that are going to have to go through similar things. What do you think ends up happening for the industry, for journalists?
This is
And for public trust in
and
these
for public trust in journalists. Oh
Yeah.
gosh, this is a little bit of a counterintuitive way of looking at it, but I think it's going to head in this direction. There's a lot of journalism that was really dependent on human interaction. Like, there's something as simple as I need to be in Congress to chase down this senator for a quote and interact with like the decision makers on a day-to-day basis, or like I need to be out in the field talking to people at a protest. But having those relationships now and having built them over time, that's something that can't be replaced by AI. However, the entry-level jobs that got me to this point of me being like a little blog copy monkey churning out like little posts all the time based on like what else was happening in the news, those jobs are going to be gone. There's going to be a generation of people who want to get into journalism that just simply can't because those jobs aren't available. Like, that's what I hear whenever I talk to people in college who want to be journalists all the time. They're certainly trying to branch into other forms of storytelling. Video is a really big one, short form social media. But that's like you have to be fairly independent in order to succeed there, and even then that's not a certain path. What if the algorithm suddenly turns on you? What if that social media platform suddenly just like vanishes? I worry that that journalism is going to be increasingly like losing out on upcoming generations of people who learn how to be journalists, who learn how to report and build these relationships and put together this knowledge base. Like, those jobs are going to be taken up by AI that needs to aggregate all of the news that the humans are creating. And you
lose out on apprenticeship, you lose out on the skills to actually I agree entirely. I think what's coming is going to drive people crazy at a societal scale, and my thesis is it's going to drive people back to basic IRL human interaction. I think we're already seeing that in churches and religious communities.
Like religious attendance is on the rise. I think Zoomers are becoming like really evangelical Christian. That wasn't happening a decade ago.
There's a Catholic church across the street from PubKey NYC in Greenwich Village. This is Greenwich Village. It's the oldest Catholic church in Manhattan. And after the murder of Charlie Kirk, I'll pop in every once in a while because it's one of my favorite things about PubKey NYC. The fathers in it's a Franciscan Catholic church, so they'll come in the robes and order a burger. The father at the church orders the same thing. It's a double smash burger with bacon and a shot of bourbon. And it's like a joke in Seinfeld. It's like, the father walks into the bar. It's fantastic. But I'll pop in there every once in a while because they're friendly and in the neighborhood. I'm also Christian. And I was shocked. It's a barbell. It's blue hair and very young. Wow. And it was, men and women, like on the younger end of the spectrum. There's no millennials, no Xers really at the church. But that barbell was really, really striking to see, and it's sustained for a while now.
Wow.
And the Wall Street Journal, I think today, put out a post about the local neighborhood tavern. I've been making this opinion or thesis for a while now. I think that churches and taverns are the places that you're going to see really pop here as third places, as people are really just fed up with the loneliness and feeling like they're, the AI situation and, discourse on Twitter becomes overwhelming to the point that you have to return to some, cultural roots. And third places were always the places to do that. So I think, churches, taverns, and what you said about journalists and the human touch being such an important part of the process can't be replicated until we have, robots that look like us.
Dude, like imagine what kind of story I would have written if all I did was like scrape all the information that existed about PubKey and Trump's visit and like what was happening in the world. And then I was like,
human AI slop.
Yeah, it would just kind of be slop. And I'd be like, oh, here is the bar that promotes Bitcoin and Trump loves it. And
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And it's really not that. It's a really different experience than that, folks.
Yeah. No, I'm cautiously optimistic. I think that we go through a really hard time as everybody like short circuits and hits a hard reset. But I am optimistic that it is taking away socialization for humans, for pretty much most mammals, taking that away, like, monkeys or tigers in a zoo behave completely differently than in the wild. You look at like, all sorts of different types of behaviors, and there's lots and lots of, I would say like research on that. I think the same thing happens for humans, and the more we feel detached from one another, I think the more depressed everybody's going to get. And I hope that it gets to a certain point where people like really change their behaviors and actually try to counteract it.
Well, in the meantime, there's nerd money.
In the meantime, there's nerd money, and the nerds are fun. I think that's pretty much it. Anything that I didn't cover that you want to get to?
Oh no, I think you got a lot of it. Otherwise, I think we'd be here for hours at this point.
I have one last question.
Yes. Okay. Cool.
What is the perception of Bitcoin and crypto local to DC? And what's the perception of PubKey outside? I know that you like PubKey, and you know that we're not these crazy MAGA lunatics or whatever anything people have been saying about us, but. From a Bitcoin perspective and from a PubKey perspective, PubKey coming to DC, how do you think that the city, and you won't hurt my feelings by being honest, go ahead.
PubKey still has a long ways to go to convince people it's not MAGA. We were talking about this when I interviewed for the article. Like, there's a real tribal impulse people have when it comes to the bars and restaurants they go to.
Yeah.
And you'll find like the Republicans have their own bar, the Democrats have their own bar. Every time someone comes out going, we want to be nonpartisan, everyone dunks on them.
Yeah.
So PubKey coming in attached to a currency that is also backed by the president ends up being a like, oh,
we accept dollars too. I think he likes dollars. Now we're doubly screwed.
Oh no! No, it's just like, but like, the attitude's pretty tribal and partisan to begin with. So
we're not naive to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I totally get it.
Yeah. So there's that, and what's been fascinating me lately in crypto world is the Clarity Act, which there are two really major crypto bills that were put on the agenda for this Congress. One was the Genius Act, which established the rules around stablecoins, and the other one's the Clarity Act, which is how does the crypto market work? We're going to have these laws around it, guys, and now it's going to be regulated. And what has completely derailed the thing, I did not expect this, but neither did anyone I talked to in the crypto policy space, was that the thing driving the bill discussion into the ground is the banks, traditional finance, the people who you give money to and they store it in a savings account and they use that to invest in other things. Yeah. The JP Morgans, the Bank of America's, like those guys are now swooping in going, oh no, we can't allow stablecoins to bear yields if you put them in savings accounts. And then Coinbase, which makes a frick ton of money off of that, is like, no, wait, now you're trying to steal our money, you're coming for us. But then all the other crypto firms that don't really have much of a like horse in the race in stablecoin yields are like, wait, we were about to have this law, guy. Everyone was set to vote on this. We were going to get it through and Trump was going to sign it. Why are you stopping this now? Yeah. So I think the rest of Washington is suddenly cottoning on to exactly how crypto is going to destabilize them. It used to be sort of a nebulous concept, but now that there are laws being written around it and it's eating into their territory, they're throwing lobbying money into it and pushing back against crypto, and they're literally having big negotiations in the White House trying to hammer out language to get this bill across the finish line before the midterms.
Yeah. Losing time.
Losing a lot of time. So crypto is about to get dragged into gross, dirty political fights on the ground, and that's the next step.
It's a bit rich for JP Morgan to come out in defense of community banks with the stablecoin yield issue, because I don't think anybody was more destructive to community banks than JP Morgan, but whatever. It is, the market structure bill doesn't affect Bitcoiners too much. There is one provision in there that is important, I think, to Bitcoiners, broadly speaking. It's the BRCA, the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty, something like that, BRCA, which is basically a protection for an open source software developer that's writing code, not to be held liable if that code is then used by somebody else for illicit activity or anything like that.
Yeah.
So open source protections are really important. Outside of that, it's not too relevant to Bitcoiners, but just observing it from afar, the community bank item is also a bit weird, and also it's protect the customers, right? If the customers get better yield for their money, everybody's adults, and let people make their decisions the best they can.
But what if the money went to them and not to us?
To who?
What if like someone else got the money that we used to have? And I'm being sarcastic.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
I'm just doing some big brain.
I was on a 5:30 train. I didn't get that one.
It's okay.
I agree. It's going to get messy, and I am far from a wonk expert on how these things. I'm new to DC, but it is entertaining for now. I'm not jaded yet, so we'll see how it progresses over the next year or so.
Look, there's a lot of power and utility that you have by being by owning the restaurant that everyone goes to.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I'm very grateful. It's going to be hard to dislike us if people give us a chance. I think that we have made some progress. I know we have more to go. It's hard to change people's opinions. I'm sure that we just get lumped in with Butterworths or Joes right now. But, I appreciate you coming through, and it's always awesome talking with you.
Oh, my God. Yeah, thanks for having me. This was really fun.
All right.